Hi there, and welcome to another episode of African Business Stories, your insight into female innovators and entrepreneurs building and running businesses in Africa. I'm Akego Koye, and on the show today, I'll be chatting with Barkue Tubman-Zawolo, founder and CEO, MBL International Group, a Liberia-based company. Barkue moved back to Liberia in 2007 to be closer to family. We talk about her plans to build the entertainment industry in Liberia, but how the reality of a war-torn country made those plans unattainable at the time. She still found gaps and opportunities and went on to build an event production, brand building, and strategic partnerships company. Let's get into it. Hi, Barkue. Welcome to African Business Stories.
Thank you, Akego, for having me.
So let's just start from the beginning. Your grandfather was the longest serving president of Liberia. I understand that there was a coup and your family had to leave Liberia, and you were about 8 years old when this happened. So just looking back, I was just wondering what it was like, what you remember about growing up in Liberia, and what settling in the U.S. was like for you as a young child.
So growing up in Liberia was amazing. I mean, up until the coup happened, I remember my life being fantastic. My parents were amazing. I went to amazing schools in Liberia, hung out with tons and hundreds of cousins. Liberia is a very close-knit community. Life in Liberia was fine. Going to school, playing, just what kids do,
Right.
That's what it was. It was normal. It was what I still knew to be a normal childhood.
Right. So what was coming to the US like, and how was it settling into the US?
So coming to I think as a mother now myself, I am a mom of toddler triplets. As a mother now, as we move around, even recently because of the pandemic, one of the things that I know it was of the utmost important to me was to make sure that my kids felt as normal as possible, no matter where we went. And
Right.
so I think being that young, I do remember us having to move from place to place until we did get settled. I remember living in hotel rooms until we actually got, an apartment. So it was really more of that. But I think what was really good at that initial moment was how my parents, and my parents include obviously my mother, my father, but in the true African settings, like my aunt Charlotte, my mother's sister, my uncle Isiaku, my mother's, who's Nigerian, by the way. I grew up with a lot of Nigeria stuff going on around me. They just made it seamless, made it feel seamless initially. But what was different was meeting the new friends and understanding how Americans raise their kids as opposed to how Africans raise their kids. Americans are pretty free. You can mouth off to your parents and it's almost accepted. Clearly, you're not going to yell at your Liberian mother at all. That's not happening. So that part I think was a little bit odd. And I think, you could see that our parents were unsettled because of the instability and trying to figure it out. But in terms of, for me personally, I have my sister with me and my cousins, and we were really blessed for that to be somewhat of a smooth transition. It definitely took you away from what the norm was, and you had to navigate that. But I think they did exactly what parents probably had to do at that time, and fight very hard to make sure that we maintain some sort of normalcy.
Interesting. So where did you go to college, and what did you study?
So I went to a small college in North Carolina called Elon College, and now Elon University. And I got my major in French and my minor in economics. Actually, I'm lying. I got my major. That's not true. I got my major in French. I got my minor in business, and I had a concentration in economics.
Wow. So I understand you built a career in artist management in the US. So talk to us a bit about that.
So there was a point where I really wanted to be in the entertainment industry. And I was trying to figure out how to make that happen. And And so part of how that happened was I actually wanted to be an artist.
Okay.
But I wanted a way in, and I was trying to figure it out. And then trying to do that, I realized that as much as I did want to be an artist myself, I wanted to understand that I knew that there was a business, and I wanted to understand the business. And so the only opportunity and in that I had at that moment was my brother-in-law, who was working for Motown, but he worked on business side. He was very instrumental in developing the Motown Cafe, and did a lot of the business ventures for Motown Records. And
Right.
so I was like, I gotta get a job. Like, I need to figure this out. I want to be in this industry. And he said, listen, I don't really do the music side, but we have a travel agent. Our travel agent, is looking to hire somebody. I guess they had mentioned it to him. And I was like, I want that job. And he was like, how do you go from wanting to be in, the creative entertainment side to wanting to do travel? I was like, listen, all I need is opportunity. Just put me in front of this door. I'll bust that door open, and then I'll try to get to the next door. I just need that in. And basically, he made the introduction. I went for the interview with this company, and the majority of their clients were entertainment clients, and I got the job. And they were like, what do you know about traveling? And I said, absolutely nothing, except for the fact that I love to travel. I knew absolutely nothing. I had to learn the system on how to book tickets, but what I did know is I knew how to build relationships. And one of the things that would have to happen in order for me to do this work is to communicate with the people that were actually in the business that I was trying to get to.
Right. So how did you make that transition to artist management?
So basically, I built relationships with clients, and what I did was, really, really stepped up on what customer service was. So although we were booking travel and helping them with logistics for tours and things, I actually really supported them in a way where I made myself available 24/7. If there were any issues on the road, they could call me. They had direct beepers. Back then we had beepers. They could call me. I offered my service to support if there was an artist that was even in transit in New York, because that's where we were. I offered to support. And so you just start building the relationship where they realize like there was more. And then of course, as you build trust, you can start asking more questions. You start really getting into why you want to be there, but you got to build the trust. You got to deliver on what it is that you're originally offering, and then you figure out how to grow from there. And so I just really strengthened the relationships that were brought to us through the travel agency. And then,
so when did you set up your own company, and what was it called?
So my company, when I started it was called Miss Boss Lady Entertainment.
Love it. Love it.
It's called Miss Boss Lady Entertainment. And oh God, that was like that. I started that company in like 1999. Right. I've been an entrepreneur for a very, very long time. And I started, when I wanted a name, I actually was trying to figure out what would be the best name. And it was during the time where, I was working in the hip hop R&B industry, and names mattered, so we had Jermaine Dupri with So Def, and and Diddy with Bad Boy, and and I was like, okay, so what is a female? There weren't that many female owned management companies, and I was like, what is a female owned company? What are we called? And trying to figure out a name. I wanted to name one that would resonate or represent Liberia. And at that time, I had no intentions. Like, if you would have told me then that I would even be here right now, and we'd be having a conversation about me being a business person in Liberia, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. No interest, not coming back. That place was it was too much. But I wanted a name that would actually resonate and represent Liberia. And in Liberia, one of the things is, growing up, everybody called the woman of the house, or a female who was an executive or maybe even had a job, they called them boss lady, boss lady, the boss lady, boss lady, boss lady. And so basically I was like, okay, I'm going to take that name, and then added the Miss, because I really wanted respect. The entertainment industry is very much a male dominated, especially back then, even more so, a male dominated industry. And I wanted to put a handle to my name where you put some respect on my name, and people knew that I was coming, and I was coming for business, and I wanted, to walk in the door and people want to know, Miss Boss Lady, what is that? And so in my head, the crazy thing is, I think it almost started the women's empowerment movement that I love to be a part of now, because it really was a time when there weren't that many females that had their own businesses. There were female executives, but there weren't many female-owned management companies.
Right. So, can you just tell us a few of the artists you managed back in the day?
Sure. I managed and or work on the management team of artists like Usher, Boyz II Men, New Edition, Donnell Jones, Next, Missy Elliott, Outkast,
Wow.
Macy Gray, who else? There's so many. Naughty by Nature. I feel like I'm leaving some out. I worked with Grammy-winning producers, Rock Wilder, DJ Twins. I managed some stylists that were styling John Legend, Lisa Sellers, Diddy. So I mean, it's
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're doing all this, and then it's 2005, and Liberia elects the first female president in all of Africa. I have some Liberian friends, and when I've asked them, when did you move back home? They all kind of moved back around that time, around 2005, 2007, and as I was reading your story, I was wondering, was this part of the reason why Barkue decided to move back home? And, so yeah, I guess my question is, you then move back or start considering to move back to Liberia in 2005, and what brought you to that point of wanting to move back home?
So a couple of the main thing, to be honest with you, is when I worked in the entertainment industry, it really is a 24. Back then, especially, it was really 24/7. That was what you did. It almost like you felt like you got rewarded for not sleeping. It's almost like if you slept, you couldn't really tell anybody. You really, the people that were succeeding then we just went. You just keep going nonstop. In fact, we used to say you sleep when you die. That's
right.
We used to say that. And so I didn't, when my mother would come to the US to visit, the minute she hit the ground, I'd be off onto the next thing. And there was a time where she came, and this was maybe about 2003-ish. And she came, and as soon as she hit the ground, the next day I got on a flight and I had to go to LA with Busta Rhymes, another artist who I had the pleasure and honor to work with, go to LA for the MTV Music Awards and get there. And the next day I get a call that my mom had been, had rushed to the hospital because she had a mild stroke. And so jumped on the plane, came back, and it was really crazy seeing my mother lay in the hospital. And it was just a weird feeling. And that's when I started to think that, my parents are getting older. I spend so much time, I give so much of my time to this industry that I do love, but at some point, I have to start doing better to make sure that I start spending more time with, my mom. And so that's what started to have the wheels turn in my head, and start to think about what transition would possibly look like, or expansion, to start to explore what going back home would look like. And I have to say, though, with the elections of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and her success in that election, I did come to Liberia, and it felt different. I had visited before, it just felt different. There was this sense of hope,
right,
that was just in the air, and people were just, you could tell there was going to be change. Not only because she was elected, but because the people wanted change. They were tired. They were ready for this change. And she was the catalyst that was used for this change. And just the fact that people were just, you could tell, it was just this sense of things are about to move in the right direction finally. Like Liberia is going to finally get a chance to show up and be a part of everything else that's happening in the world. So it definitely, I think, fast-tracked my officially coming on the ground. But my original reason was family, my mom, and then with EJS and Liberia, when I did come to Liberia at that time, in fact, it was right before her inauguration, and I just saw so much happening. I was like, oh, God, there's just so much opportunity here. And they're like, I tell everybody Liberia, to me, when I saw it at that time, it was just like a blank canvas. Also, at that time, the entertainment industry was sort of going through its own set of changes. Everything was becoming more digital. People were still navigating what that would look like today. And I just saw Liberia as a blank canvas, and with so much opportunity and potential that I could just paint it any color in any way that I wanted. And I wanted a piece of what was going to happen in Liberia around that time.
So you start coming back in 2005, and then you finally settle in 2007, did you say?
Yeah, it's about 2007 when I started to then spend at least 75% of my time, in Liberia. I decided to make it a focus. I had to have the hard conversations with my clients in the US, like, okay, this is how life is going to shift. And really, because I didn't want to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. If I was going to do it, I wanted to do it, go hard or go home sort of thing. And that's when I said, you know what, I'm going to give Liberia a real chance.
So what was your plan, Barkue? You were going to come back to Liberia and do what?
So interestingly enough, I was coming back to Liberia and I was going to take over the entertainment industry. I was going to, I had this whole business plan. I was going to just really come to Liberia and just really build an industry and help the entertainment industry, the young people, really grow it into a enterprise, a money-making enterprise.
Right.
And so that was my plan. That was what I wanted to do. But that's not what happened, right? Because Liberia, everything in Liberia is attached to government in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Annoyingly so. And also at that time, as great as I think my plan was, and as great and as much as I think the young artists and the young creative, talented folks would have and could have appreciated it, the problem was people were still trying to just survive. They wanted to eat.
Exactly.
So my grandeur, elaborate, built entertainment industry at that time was not primary focus for really anybody. It was barely for the artists. The artists did it because they loved it, but they also primarily wanted to feed themselves. So we did get to do some things that supported them. And so that's when I realized I had to shift my focus. And I just sort of dug deep and said, you know what are the skill sets that I already have and what's needed? One of the things that I actually saw was there were a lot of international organizations, USAID, UN, of course, on the ground, World Bank, IFC, you name it, they were here.
Right.
And one of the things that happened as a country is rebuilding is a ton of workshops and a ton of conferences. And every time, because I was trying to navigate building whatever it was I was going to be building at the time, I also wanted to understand what was going on in the country. And based on relationships, I would be made aware of some of these workshops, and I would have an opportunity to attend because they were about, the rebuilding in every area. And I wanted to understand like what was really happening and what does that really mean. So as I went to them, I realized that most of the time in being in these workshops and or conferences, the facilitators spent more time worried about the electricity, just the mismanagement of facilities. There was not a lot of attention paid to the substance of why everybody should have been there.
Right.
And I realized that they were also trying to facilitate, plan, implement all by themselves. And I'm like, okay, well, I've put national tours together. I've put huge celebrities, platinum recording celebrities on tour buses. We've gone to city after city after city. I've coordinated all these logistics. I'm an organizer. I can put people together. I'm the fixer. I can do damage control. I can help these people actually plan the event so they can focus on their real mission. And so I spoke to a few people in different positions and I said, listen, the World Bank had a program here called Liberia Better Business Forum. And so they used to do quite a few workshops to, improve the private sector, understand the private sector, empower the private sector. And so I actually started to coordinate their meetings. And from there on, it just sort of led into more opportunity, more events. And then, honestly, there weren't anybody else. There was really nobody else in Liberia doing events or marketing. I mean, I actually spent probably my first 8 years in Liberia educating my potential customers,
right,
and really taking a lot less than I deserved, because the market was just learning what an event planner was, or an event production. Yeah.
Yes.
Why marketing was important, why PR is important. I mean, Liberians tend to look at those things, they know it, but they view it and they use it in different ways. So I actually had to really help educate the value. And fast forward today, there are several event planning companies, and a lot of them, it's really humbling and an honor when they tell me, "Oh my God, we learned from watching you." And some of them even worked for me. So it was pretty cool.
That's interesting. And I heard that in that time, you also did a lot of events for the presidency. So what was that like to finally work with President Johnson Sirleaf?
It's stressful because she demands a lot. She demands a lot. But I also like to deliver. One of the things that's really important to me is my reputation. I think, you can fall down a gazillion times, but you can always rebuild if you have a solid reputation. So for me, I also push the buttons. I encouraged her to do things that she thought Liberia wasn't even ready for. We pulled off, the International Women's Colloquium. We pulled off high-level panels. We pulled up major high-level trade delegations. And from doing all of those things, I got the opportunity to get clients like Bob Johnson and his company, the founder of BET, Bono's One Campaign, Forbes, and Delta. And so it's with Madame Sirleaf. The thing with working for her or delivering for her, for me, was always bigger than her. It was always, this woman must always shine. And whatever part that I can play in that, because as women, with her being the first, and it being such a huge deal, I think, for us on the continent, and honestly, Black women globally,
right.
I think that, for me, everything I did needed to have an impact, and it needed to represent her, not just because I was getting paid to do a job, but how would it reflect on Liberia? And so, we just built that relationship, and she really, till today, actually, I'm on the board of her center. She's actually a client of mine as well. And she just built I think I just built this trust, with her. And it's something that I totally appreciate. I do not take it for granted, because she is somebody that I really look up to. So to have an opportunity to work this closely with her now, and even back then, but it's even better now. It's honestly really a gift and a blessing.
I mean, you've done so many different things in the last, 13, 15 years of being in Liberia. And how would you compare? You talked about how you saw Liberia as a plain canvas with so much opportunity. How would you compare the business environment 15 years ago to the business environment in Liberia today?
So when I first came, it was young. It was young. So the Sirleaf administration had to do a lot of work, which they did, to brand Liberia. There was a whole campaign called Liberia's Open for Business. And they took Liberia on the road, made these videos, engage investors, because Liberia is a country, like a lot of how the economy worked, it was coming from the investors coming in, and of course the international community. That was what was helping the small, medium enterprises, but so back then there was eventually in the beginning, it was a little slow, because we had to get the country back on the map. People had to know this country was here and it was ready. There are opportunities in agriculture, and you name it. It was all there. And so we had a lot of people coming to Liberia. So it created a lot of opportunity for the private sector. And then, fast forward to today, we lost a lot of the people that were here. A lot of people have downsized. So right now, the economy is not doing so well, and the private sector is suffering. But we have to work really hard at that, because the private sector is really responsible for job creation, or needs to be. The government is the largest employer, but the private sector has a major role that it should play, and it can play, and it has played in employment. So a lot of people, because the economy is not what it used to be, are not working. They've closed their businesses. Some of them have even left Liberia. So it's very different. We went from a lot of opportunity to where we are today. And then coupled with now a pandemic, it's just, it's like, what more?
Yeah.
What more?
Yeah, we're going to come to talk about that. So after you left the government, you've done, like I said, you've done so many different things. So what path did you go down after working so closely with the government? So what did you end up doing after?
So, even while working with the government, I worked with non-government people. The government was just one of my clients. I've never worked in government.
Okay.
Basically what my company did is we did event planning, we did branding, we did PR, we did marketing, we did market entry strategy for people who wanted to come to do business in Liberia. We had events that we owned, and then there were times where we produced events for companies. We did branding for clients like Coca-Cola. I did PR for Delta and other banks and other corporations that were in Liberia as well. So government just happened to be, a big client of mine, and I happened to, again, build relationship. I think one of the things, and the reason government worked for me back then also, is because a lot of when I did work for any government entity or agency or person, for me, it was about Liberia. And because I understood the dynamics of the Liberian environment at the time, I knew how to make sure whatever agency or ministry that contracted me, that whatever we did spoke to the larger Liberia agenda. So I did get lucky and to have those opportunities, but I also delivered.
That's right. So you changed the name of your company slightly when you got to Liberia. Tell us about that.
I did. So I came from hip hop and R&B to Liberia, and because of work I was doing in the U.S. and with the type of artists that I was working with, everybody started to get word, Barkue, Liberian, Barkue. I would be on award shows, with my artists, and they would get to see it, and it was like a whole big deal. Come to Liberia, Miss Boss Lady's great, but I'm diversifying. I'm not just entertainment. I really want to get these government, corporate, large private sector players as clients, and I would get invited to these events. The embassies would do events, and every time I met somebody, they would say, "Oh, Miss Boss Lady." They just wanted to meet me because they thought the name was, it was. I think the name was entertaining to them, but then it just didn't really sit and fit the environment that I found myself in. Not only because I was in Liberia, but also because I knew at some point, as I wanted to expand, I needed it to make sure that it resonated with the types of clients that I wanted to engage. And so I basically at that point decided, what do I do? And rebranded into MBL. And so MBL actually stands for Miss Boss Lady.
So it's still there.
It's there. In fact, it's so there that it's actually now sort of informed and guided where we're going next. Yes. So it's, it's very much there. And interestingly enough, like being in Liberia, at first I really started to get involved in youth empowerment. And I just then decided from everything that I saw and all of my engagements with the young people that the girls just we were still so far behind. As much as we had Madam Sirleaf as the president, women and so many other women that she had appointed in her government, the girls and the women in Liberia were still too far below and low on the totem pole. And I wanted to, and I still do want to play a role in supporting how to elevate them in entrepreneurship, education, and the creative arts and exposure.
You talked about, having triplets. And I wonder how you balance, you personally, Barkue, how do you balance running your business and raising these toddler triplets?
So when I first had the kids, I actually was convinced that actually I could do it all, and then I would try to work and, feed 3-4 times, and there's 3 kids. So basically, every parent in the beginning may have they feed a child, the kid sleeps, they may have another 3 hours, but imagine having to feed 3 and then within less than 2 hours, they're up again. So it's just constant. In my mind, I thought I could do it, but then I realized that was a lot to chew off. What it did help me to do when I first had my kids, and even now, is streamline. Get rid of, trim the fat, focus. and, and really define what I wanted MBL to be in the future, what I want to build and what I want to focus on. And so, really for me, it's about building a brand that is a legacy that I can leave for my children, a brand that also, thrives in purpose, impacts, and results. Building something tangible that really speaks to my community, which is a community of professional women who have to navigate life, whether you're married, single, with children, without children, just being a woman, a Black woman, an African woman. I wanted my MBL to basically help me speak to that part of what I feel is really important to leave behind for my children. And that's honestly where we are. So basically, fast forward to what MBL is, it almost takes everything we were doing, but now it's even more focused. I'm even more focused and thoughtful and intentional about even the types of clients that I accept, now.
Right.
And, I focus a lot on female owned businesses now and females, personality as clients. And people, and the clients that I work with now, it's really important for me that they have a purpose, because, right. We all want to make money, money's good. We love to make money, but I think we also have to have an impact. And I think that actually came with me having children, so right now we just focus, we're just we're an event productions, brand building, strategic partnerships, company. Those are the things that we really focus on. I mean, there's other things that come under those, right. those titles, but that's who we are. And all it is basically just being more intentional and more focused. When I first came to Liberia, I was hustling because I was figuring out a new market. I was trying to make it happen. I needed to get everywhere to figure out what was happening and where I would find my position. I've now found where I belong and how I can impact my space and what my target is and who I want to impact and how I want lives to change. And so now I'm very clear on what that is.
That's fantastic. A lot of times when I interview female entrepreneurs around Africa, one of the main things we always talk about is financing. And most of the people I talk to are in manufacturing or they have a product. So of course, the type of finance they need is on a very different level. And I wonder what it was like for you. I mean, you were more in the service industry, and I wonder what it was like for you raising money. And, is financing of small businesses something that it's available in Liberia? And just basically, how did you just talk us through that part of starting and running the business over the past few years?
So to be honest with you, I've never gotten an investment for my business. I actually never have. And the few times, or maybe 2 or 3 times that I've actually explored it, I just found it very difficult because I was in the service industry. My needs in terms of investment is I need investment for human capital. That's what I need. And it's very tough. Investors don't really get that, especially, when I first needed it. And so basically I just said, I'm going to figure this thing out. I'm going to just, make it happen. And so basically I would just use my profits to reinvest in the country. In the company. Just whenever I made some money, I would put it back in the company. And then just, that's honestly how, I did it. But I've seen a lot of friends who struggle because, there were times where the banks came and, we have a lot of Eco banks and UBAs and the big African, banks in Liberia. And there was a time where they were really big on promoting, that they had loans to help businesses grow. And I actually opened a cafe at one time. It was through the cafe. I had a cafe, I had an event rental center. I was doing events. I had event rentals. I'm telling you, wow. Liberia has many opportunities. But actually, wow. I just closed my cafe this year. My cafe was open since it was open for 7 years, and I just closed it. I just closed it this year. It's called Peace Cafe.
Why did you close it? Just by the way,
the economy, Liberia. One of the things that happen all the time, I think a lot of women feel like the only business they can do sometimes is open a restaurant, and so there was just the competition. It's not really about the competition. It just really is because just within the space that I was in, within a 3-block radius, there are probably like 20 different restaurants. So you're finding yourself having to sell things for like $1 or $2 or whatever, because And then I'm like, I'm not, I'm in the business. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a capitalist. I am not in the business just for fun. And if I don't see a brighter tomorrow, and I've been doing this for a long time, Ebola happened right when I was going into a new, much larger location. So I had to shut down for like a year and then reopen. And that was a big setback. Fast forward to, now the economy being slow, then a pandemic. And then also, again, remember I talked about trimming the fat. Like, I always said, I'm like, after, praying, I'm a girl who believes that God is really my CEO. When I think about it and I prayed about it, sometimes the thing as an entrepreneur, the things you really love or that are special to you, our businesses are our babies. They can actually be a distraction, and you got to know when to say when. And I rather take the time and focus it on my core business, which is MBL, and just say, okay, let Peace Cafe go to sleep. We're going to bow out gracefully. And I'd rather take that energy and focus it on there, because then you start losing money. Your business is open for all the wrong reasons. I also get emotional with my staff, because I realize by hiring one person, there's probably 10 to 12 people benefiting from just them having this job. So you start, as a Liberian, you get into that. Foreigners sometimes don't, because they just, they're smart. They're business people. But with that business, I think I was a very emotional entrepreneur, because I really wanted to keep it open because of the jobs, the suppliers. And then you just realize, like, you can't let your business, you're in business to make money. And if there's not good business practices and the economy's not there to support you, you have to know when to say when. And then I just, that's honestly, what I did. I just said, okay, I'm going to let it go.
So here we are now under COVID. I was going to ask how COVID has impacted your business. And I guess this is one of the ways, maybe.
Yeah.
But are there other ways it's impacted your business? And my other question around COVID, I saw that you started doing a series on Instagram after this whole COVID crisis started. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you're using your platform in this season?
Absolutely. COVID sucks. I mean, COVID is horrible because of what it's done to the world. And I think because of COVID, there's so much else that's being exposed globally that it's horrific. But I mean, it's almost like a cleansing period. I think we just have to take it for what it is and figure out what are the opportunities and how can we use this horrible time to turn it around, and what opportunities can we find and see and learn, from this period. So COVID did affect my core business. I mean, I had clients booked for appearances that didn't happen. I had just executive produced the Essence Full Circle Festival. We were supposed to be growing that into so many different things. Essence was looking to really create a footprint in Africa. That was something I was playing the lead in, and all of that got halted. All of that got halted. And while being stuck at home, while there were actually projects that I was working on for the Embassy of Sweden in Liberia, you couldn't move. So basically everything, was halted. It really was trying times. But true to Barkue, I think, one of the things that I did as I try to navigate being at home, with my life just sort of shifting 100%, I may not still be hustling in terms of how I'm getting business anymore, because I built some sort of reputation, but I'm a hustler. So I'm used to being out there. I'm used to moving around. I'm not an office person. I'm in the office for a few days, but part of what gets me my business is relationships. So going out, meeting people, bringing people together, that's what I do. And you couldn't do any of that. My kids had to be out of school, so I had to become a teacher with homeschooling. And at this time, they're like, ooh, they had just turned 3, and they're toddlers, and I have 3 of them at the same time. It was, teacher mommy and teacher daddy just were not teachers. They were not taking us seriously at all. Couldn't call a tutor. They couldn't do Zoom calls because, so just having to keep a schedule, because my kids have been in school since they were 1. So they too started to miss school. We just had to figure out how to navigate this crazy period. And one of the things that came out of it, which I'm so appreciative and I'm very grateful to God for allowing me to do this one, is I wanted to find out from other professional women and other women how they were coping. Like what was the new meaning of mastering the juggle? Like what did that look like during COVID, in the height of when the pandemic started and nobody had answers or nobody knew anything. We didn't even know that wearing a mask was that helpful at that. Like we knew nothing. So I was on a Zoom hangout with some friends of mine, and I was like, listen, I've got to talk to more people than my husband and my children. I love them, but I've got to talk to some other women and find out what they're doing. And they were like, yeah, do it. We were having wine. It was great. It was, good girlfriend time. And I hung up the phone with them. And the next week, I said, I'm going to do conversations with Boss Lady. And my first guest was a very dear friend of mine, who's a top female attorney in Liberia also. And so we did our first episode, and it's been since March, since early April, to now we have it, and we have it every Thursday at 8 p.m., Liberian time. And the crazy thing is, I didn't do it yesterday just because I was so drained from watching everything that's happening in the world and then Nigeria. So I actually needed a moment. I was like, you know what? I don't feel like getting on camera and, I'm loud. I laugh. I like, one of the things that was important to me with conversations with Boss Lady was to not only celebrate the accomplishments of the women, but to also understand their journey and understand the person that is the successful woman that you may see today, and create a safe space where they could just be honest. I mean, and we talk about everything about, oh my God, the amount of wine we drank in the beginning, to code. We talk, we talk about everything. It's a no judgment zone. It's a total no judgment zone. I am actually there to protect these women, to elevate them, to highlight them, to promote them, and to let them know that I'm going to introduce them to my world. And my tribe will support them, and we'll learn from them, and we'll learn from each other. And, hopefully there's lots of collaborations and amazing things that happen, because there's so many amazing women doing awesome things, and we just don't know about them.
I was intentionally looking for a Liberian entrepreneur to interview. Someone mentioned your name. So in doing my research, I came across your Instagram handle and I watched a couple of them, and it so resonated with me. The entire idea about telling the story of our women, or giving women the opportunity to tell their stories, and putting more of those stories out there. So that really resonated with me, and I wanted to say thank you for doing that.
You. Actually, I'm a selfish entrepreneur. Most of the businesses that I do is because it's something that I would like, So for me, with conversations with Boss Lady, it really was something that really fuels my soul, and and it really did lift me up during those crazy times. And like I tell everybody that I invite on, people who are sometimes skeptical or hesitant, like, oh my God, I'm not going to interview. I'm like, it's not an interview. It's really a conversation. It's really just a conversation. And we talk about who's loving who, dating life, but then we talk about the real things. We talk about current events. We talk about their businesses, and I feel like sometimes, when you're professional, you don't get an opportunity to be that. A lot of times you have to speak so much about your business, which is important, but all of what people see was made up from who you are, from your journey, from your upbringing, from your friends, your circle, the people that are there that push you up, the people that get on your nerves every day, that obstacle, that moment of just crazy crying because you just had a bad day. But people also want to learn how you overcame that. People also want to know that those moments are very real. And if they can go through that and still be where they are, that means it's okay that I can have a bad day too. And, so that honestly really what it was for me. And it's grown tremendously.
It has. Awesome. Congratulations. So that's my last question will be what's next for you?
So that's the thing I'm super excited about. So I have this organization called the Boss Lady Effect. And, which is defined as, making moves intentionally, making moves with intention and purpose, and changing the world one boss girl at a time. And basically it's a global network of professional women who come together to grow their network, to grow their net worth, but also to empower the next generation of boss girls to become boss ladies. And so what's happening now is I'm launching in December our first annual She Boss Summit and Awards. And it's going to air on Essence Studios. So I'm super excited about that.
Awesome.
And it's going to be a series of, it's a one-day event. It's going to be a series of panel discussions, fireside chats, roundtables, and then there will be a portion where we're going to, honor and celebrate, our sisters around the globe. I have to say that I'm intentionally focusing on heavily on brown and Black women. And I really want to push my African sisters, in the forefront because I think we're amazing. And I think that the more people understand what we're already doing, I think, the more collaborations, I think so much would be great. So I think Essence is a phenomenal platform that caters to women, Black women globally. One of them, in fact, their mission is to serve Black women deeply. So to have an opportunity to air the She Boss Summit and Awards on a platform with existing 17 million plus people already is a huge blessing. And it's that business, that tangible thing that's coming from MBL, because this is where, we really get to make that impact. We really get to connect, learn, empower, grow, and support each other as a global community of professional brown and Black women.
Right.
So the other thing that I'm super excited about is this concept that I had for over 7 years, but is now actually taking shape. And it's called Be Africa Luxury. Be Africa Luxury for me is honestly, it's several things, but it's really a mindset shift in how I want people to engage Africa using the beauty, the riches, the creativity of a lot of African talent in the continent and on the continent and in the diaspora. And so, the tools and the areas that we're focusing on is fashion, art, lifestyle, travel, but also making sure that we use this platform. It's e-commerce, it's blogs, it's, really insight into the African creative talent. There's also branded products from Be Africa Luxury, partnerships. It's a way to also groom young talent as well as take the existing African creatives and help them expand and expose their brand as well. We have some really other exciting things that we're going to do to allow people. We're going to basically take African luxury, premium quality. We're going to take it on the road. And we're going to really, we're excited about that.
That's awesome. I wish you all the best with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That was Barkue Tubman-Zawolo, founder and CEO, MBL International Group. What a story. From entertainment to events and marketing, Barkue is now finding purpose and impact in empowering other women. I love her strapline, changing the world one boss lady at a time. We're excited about the She Boss Summit and Awards coming up in December and the launch of Be Africa Luxury. We wish her all the best. Thank you so much for listening. People have asked how they can support the show. 2 things. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Apple Podcasts and write us a review. Those 2 things will help us greatly. I am Akego Okoye, and you have been listening to African Business Stories.